The Studio Electronics Tonestar is a fully patchable, premium quality Euro-Rack format synth voice. While not a clone of the classic 1970s-era 2600 model synthesizer by ARP Instruments, the Tonestar's sound is definitely reminiscent of that sought-after legendary synth, as well as its equally legendary brother, the ARP Axe. The Tonestar's front panel is bristling with 26 knobs, 7 switches, and 21 jacks, allowing access and manipulation of virtually any aspect of the module using the 1 volt per octave Euro-Rack standard. However, the Tonestar can be brought to life instantly using simply the 1 volt per octave and gate inputs, as the module is internally patched as a classic subtractive monophonic synth voice. Here, we'll patch the CV and gate outputs from a sequencer into the 1 volt per octave and gate in jacks on the Tonestar. Nothing else is currently patched. Now, of course, we can immediately start manipulating the Tonestar using the knobs. The VCO is the same one found on the Studio Electronics Oscillation, Omega, and Boomstar series. The circuit design incorporates elements of ARP, Oberheim, and Moog circuit designs, as well as decades of Studio Electronics improvements and innovations, resulting in an incredibly stable and rich-sounding tone. There is 1 switch and 3 knobs that define the mix of oscillator waveforms. The 3-position switch enables or disables the triangle wave output of the oscillator at the topmost and centermost settings. At the lowest setting, the triangle wave is routed around the VCF, bypassing the filter circuit to maintain absolute purity and low-end beef. The 3 knobs adjust the levels of the sawtooth, square, and sub-oscillator waveforms. The VCO section has controls for frequency, octave shift, glide, and pulse width. The LFO knob controls the pulse width modulation depth. This thickens the sound and adds movement. This particular knob will control the amount of triangle wave modulation sent from the LFO, regardless of the LFO's actual waveform setting. With nothing patched into the oscillator's mod in jack, the mod ADSR knob defaults to the amount of ADSR modulation sent to either frequency or pulse width, depending on the setting of the frequency pulse width switch directly above the knob. It's worth mentioning that information in parentheses after any given knob indicates the default pre-patched behavior of that knob. An alternate modulation source can be patched into the mod in jack of the oscillator section. This modulation input can also be switched to modulate frequency or pulse width, and the amount of modulation can be controlled using the mod ADSR knob, just as it can for the default pre-patched ADSR modulation. The oscillator section includes outputs for the triangle, sawtooth, and square waves individually, as well as a mix output, which is a combination of all waveforms as determined by the triangle wave switch and the individual oscillator levels, including the noise level. There is also a noise output. It has a dedicated level control and output jack. Finally, we have the 1 volt per octave jack for pitch control voltage, as well as a tune knob for adjusting the fine tune of the oscillator or to tune incoming CVs. The LFO has its own control section, and it can also be used to modulate the oscillator frequency by adjusting the depth oscillator knob seen here. The LFO can also be switched between triangle and square waves using the selector switch. The LFO itself is fully voltage controlled. There are jacks for both depth and speed, allowing modulation and rate control from external envelopes, LFOs, or whatever other sources you can imagine for more complex results. The Tonestar's filter is based on the orange and black ARP, the exact same Studio Electronics ARP clone circa 1996, which found a home in the ATC-1 and every other Studio Electronics synth with an ARP filter. It features knobs for frequency and resonance. There is also a drive knob, which sets the level being fed into the filter. Clean unity gain is at approximately 2 o'clock. Below that, the resonance will dominate. Above 2 o'clock, filter input overdrive occurs, with a significant gain increase. You may wish to balance this gain increase with the master output to prevent unwarranted new speaker purchases. The filter also features 2 modulation attenuators. The first is patched to the ADSR envelope, allowing immediate application of your envelope to the filter frequency. Secondly, the mod LFO knob attenuates the modulation amount sent to either frequency or resonance of the filter, depending on the position of the frequency resonance switch. By default, the modulation source is the LFO. Patching a signal into the filter's mod-in jack will allow you to use any external modulation source you wish. There is also an external input available at the ext-in jack, allowing you to route external audio through the filter, envelopes, and amp. Finally, we have a filter output jack for taking the direct output from the filter. The Tonestar offers 2 envelopes, both an ADSR and AR envelope. In the top position, drone, the ADSR is unaffected, but the AR, which controls the amplifier, is overridden, providing infinite sustain. In the center position, both the ADSR and AR envelope are selected, with independent control of the amplifier by the AR. In the bottom position, master, the VCA is also controlled by the ADSR. The AR is still patchable, however. Note that the gate light follows the activity of the ADSR. The envelope section features a gate input for triggering of the envelopes, a mod input for dynamic modulation of the ADSR, and outputs for both the ADSR and AR envelopes. The voltage-controlled amplifier section of the Tonestar is simple, but powerfully expressive. The feedback knob controls the amount of filter output going back to the filter input, an infinite feedback loop, allowing for additional thickening and overdriving of the sound. course, the volume knob does exactly what you might expect. Patch points for the VCA include the output, a CV input for external control, and a VCA inject for patching external-internal audio sources post-filter. The in mix switch switches between the external source or a mix of internal and external sources. The Tonestar is fully outs-to-outs modular. This means you can patch, for example, the sawtooth output into the filter output for a high-pass filter effect. One can experiment with all other waveforms and every harebrained outs-to-outs combo for magnified sonic zaniness. Studio Electronics would like you to think of the Tonestar as a go-to bassline and lead tool, a premium quality, complete synth module for end-to-end analog sound design and near fearless exploration.